All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the ASP.NET Core Community Stand-Up, where we talk about the latest updates to .NET web development. I'm Daniel Roth. I'm the Principal Product Manager for ASP.NET Core on the .NET team. And today we're going to be talking about all the new goodies coming in .NET 11 Preview 7, which should be shipping momentarily, anytime now. We'll just have to wait and see. So keep watching the .NET site for the release to show up there. It should be coming very, very soon. I have a couple of very special guests with me today. First of all, we have, of course, Javier Calvarro Nelson, Principal Architect on the ASP.NET Core team. Welcome, Javier.
Hello, everyone.
And then we also have Daria here with us today. Daria is a software engineer on the Blazor team. Hi, Daria.
Hi.
All right. So today we're going to be talking about all the new features, particularly for ASP.NET Core in .NET 11 Preview 7. So for all you web developers out there, these are the new things that you can use in this latest .NET 11 release. Preview 7 is I think it's the last planned preview update for the .NET 11 release. So we are getting pretty close to the end here. After Preview 7, typically we then start work on our first release candidate, which I believe the team is already hard at work on. So that should come out, roughly another month or so after Preview 7 ships. Then we'll wait to see your feedback after you get a chance to kick the tires, try out all the new features. Let us know if there's any last-minute problems that we need to address. Usually there's another release candidate that will ship after that, a second release candidate, which has any cleanup that's needed. And then the final release for the .NET 11 release coming in November. I believe the .NET Conf event has now been announced. That's when we'll have the release party for .NET 11 and talk about all the great new things that are in the release and the latest updates to the .NET ecosystem and community. So be sure to mark your calendar for that. Maybe I'll bring that up at the announcement at the end here. Okay, but for today, let's take a look at all the new features that are coming in .NET 11 Preview 7. To kick things off, Daria is here to show us some of her handiwork, her craftsmanship that she's been, things that she's been working on. Daria, what do you have to show to us today?
I have cache to show.
Caching. Okay, great. Let me go ahead and I'll share your screen so that people can see what you're showing. What sort of caching? What is this all about?
So, as we know, Blazor already has output cache, but what if users only want to cache some part of the page? For example, on this very long loading products page, we have this big kind of database like query. What if we want to cache it and to share it between users so they won't have to wait for 10 seconds every time it loads? Well, we can just share it and put it inside the new cache view component. It will cache the output cache, output HTML, so no lifecycle of the components will be run.
You render the component once, and it'll kind of like it'll do the rendering the first time, but then when you come back to this cached content, that rendering that you did before will now be just basically reused, and you just get all the work that's already been done. You don't have to redo that again. You just get the cached content.
Yep. And even more, if multiple users at the same time will want to access the same cache, only one of them will run all of the computations, all of the database queries, all of the requests, and everyone else will just get the result of the one who did it. So that is also some optimization.
Nice. Okay, so this is a performance improvement, and this sounds a lot like for folks that are familiar with MVC or Razor Pages. I think for a while we've had a cache tag helper that was available for your CSHTML files that you could do something very similar. You could have some content that you say, this I would like to be stored in output cache. It renders the first time, and then later when you come back, you just reuse the existing rendered content. This is sort of like the Blazor equivalent of that, I guess. Like we have a Blazor component instead of a tag helper that allows you to use output caching with your Razor component rendered results.
Yes. Yep. Blazor is also interactive. So if you want to have one big cache view, but you don't want to really have this part cached. You can just make it its own component and put it with the attribute that it will re-render on each request. So, for example, here we have that this thing will be cached, but the other one will be re-rendered each time. So, for example, products page, we have a form that works independent of the cache.
Yeah.
Nice.
So the magic thing that Blazor adds is that you can actually poke holes into the cache content and say, I want actually this this content to like re-render when the caching happens. So you get to skip the expensive parts, but you get to run the parts that you want fresh all the time.
It's kind of like Swiss cheese caching. You can cache the cheese part, but leave the holes still rendering normally, like rendering interactively.
Exactly, and I do believe that this is unique to Blazor. That is different from MVC.
Yeah, I don't think MVC had this. Is it, I think sometimes this is. I know I was joking with the Swiss cheese thing, but is this the donut hole caching or is this donut caching? Which
donut hole is the opposite. Donut hole is when you like cache the middle. This is donut caching.
No, this is the donut caching. Okay, gotcha. Yes, and I do love donuts, so this is important to get the donut metaphors correct. So that's super cool. Okay, so you can like cache a bunch of content. If you're like, but shoot, there's just this one little piece here that I need to not cache that needs to be live. You can kind of single that island out and say like, but don't cache this part.
Yes, but what if you want to cache something for users or new QuickGrid that depends on the query? Well, you can just add vary by so that it will cache it based on the now query. Or you can do vary by user. It completely depends on what you want to have.
So all the normal vary by parameters on the output caching system, you can also hook here. You can like it basically adds to the cache key, right? Like it says that the cache key should be further qualified by this additional value.
And if vary by, which we provide by default, is not enough for you, you can use vary by and just add your custom vary by parameter that you want.
Nice, excellent. That's great. Okay, I mean, there's a couple questions here. Can I pop one or two of these on? Let me move your face up, Daria, so that people can see you while we're asking. Does a Blazor client get notified of the cache expiry or update without needing a server trip with this caching? Interesting question. Yeah, how does cache expiry happen and how does notifications occur?
It's a completely static SSR feature, so nothing gets notified. It's just re-renders.
And this is caching from the server, right? Like this is using the output caching infrastructure. So this is important. This is a server-based caching feature. So it doesn't really apply to like WebAssembly rendering.
No, it's just for static server-side rendering.
Yeah, it is purely server rendering. It's not even HTTP caching. So you won't see an E-tag or any other like mechanism like that over the HTTP response. Is literally you control when the thing runs and for how long it gets cached in that server instance, so to speak.
Makes sense. Okay, gotcha. And then there was another one here about like use the cache value. Maybe this was a reference to I think this I'm doing this in the wrong order. Does like singleton lazy pattern, but as a component wrapper, nice. And then they said like use the cache value, pull fresh async, and update when the fresh pull finishes. I think that's a question. I'm not sure if I'm parsing that completely. Pull fresh async. Update
so I think that relates to stale while revalidate. So none of these things apply here. Essentially, what I understand is like I want to use the cache value. And then once I have new data, I want to like update the data that I show. It's entirely a static server-side rendering feature, as Daria mentioned. So none of those things apply. The only thing that it applies is this value cached now or not? If it's cached, is going to be the cached version, the final version, so to speak. There's not going to be an update after that.
Makes sense. All right, cool. That's great. All right, awesome. Anything else, Daria?
Well, there are some pre-made whole components in Blazor now. For example, anti-forgery component. So you don't need to think, will anti-forgery component, will anti-forgery token re-render each time? It will.
And in fact, I think we even added some like attributes, like some things that, like if you're a component author and you need to do something similar, where you need to control whether or not your component is cached or not, or if it needs to vary by something in particular, like QuickGrid, for example. Like QuickGrid, often like in .NET 11, we added all that support for server-side rendering, static server-side rendering, where it leverages the query string for different sorting and that type of stuff. It caches by, does a vary by query string on the component itself. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, so if you have components like that and you want to control the caching behavior, you can use this cache behavior attribute to say whether or not it should ever be cached, whether it should vary by something particular. And you can even, like, I think there's one that says like if you even try to cache me, like you just can't, like I'm gonna force it to fail.
For example, if you put authorize view in the cache view component, then it will throw unless you have cache vary by user, because otherwise every user will get the same cache.
Which you don't want. Makes sense. All right, cool. All right, that is great. Thank you very much. And then pop this off and I'll share my screen. I have a few things I want to show from .NET 11 Preview 7 as well. The demos I'm going to show are all in my aspnetcore 11 samples repo. You can find this on GitHub under my Dan Roth 27 GitHub account if you want to play around with these things. Obviously, you'll need the Preview 7 bits, but like I said, they should be available momentarily. The first thing I wanted to show was some improvements that we made to QuickGrid around virtualization. If you've been following along with .NET 11, you are probably familiar with the improvements we've made to the virtualized component, like support for variable height. Actually, let me just bring this up so people can see. Yeah, here we go. So like, for example, we added support for variable height rendering to virtualize. Oh, did I not? No, sorry, map's not running. Let me go ahead and get it started. And we'll be able to hopefully see all the virtualized goodies. Let's see, variable height. You can like control the scroll position, like make it jump to the top, jump to the bottom. You can set initial scroll position on virtualize. Let me just remind people of these things. So here's like variable heights virtualized. You no longer have to have like a fixed height for all your virtualized items. There's these new anchor modes where you can like pin the virtualization to either the top or the bottom when items get appended to the list. So like if we like say let's pin it to the start and then we prepend a bunch of items, we'll jump to the top. But if you've already scrolled a little bit and you prepend some more items, it'll just stay where it's at. So there are a bunch of goodies in virtualize, including the ability to like scroll to a particular item and to start the virtualization at a particular item. Like here we have a virtualized list where we're starting on the 500th item. That's because there's this nice new initialize item index property on the component that you can use for that, and you can have an API on virtualize to like jump around. Like if you want to jump to the top or jump to the end, there's APIs now that you can do that. We've now integrated those virtualization features into QuickGrid, so you can get the same capabilities. So down here, I have an example of a QuickGrid component, and you can see I'm starting at the 500th item. So that's the initialize item to 500, like we saw with virtualize. And then you can, again, like jump to the top, jump to the end using the API. It's like to show you what that looks like in code. Here's my QuickGrid component where I'm using the new features. We item index property to QuickGrid. And then we're also grabbing here a ref to the grid. And if we look down below, you can see I'm calling this grid scroll to item async API that allows us to control which item we're looking at in the virtualized list. Okay, so that's basically taking all the goodies that we added to virtualize, which QuickGrid uses under the covers, and then surfacing those features up to you if you're using QuickGrid as your basic data grid component. All right, so that's that one. Next, let's look at some of the improvements we made to client-side validation. So if you've been following along, again, you may have remember that in previous releases of .NET 11, we've been working on our support for client-side validation so that you can like validate your forms without needing a full interactive render mode. Often you want, as you're typing into something, like if I type something that's not actually an email address in here and I tab out, I want to immediately tell the user like, hey, you didn't actually type an email address. You need to fix that. prior to .NET 11, to get that client-side validation experience, the whole form needed to be rendered interactively, either using the interactive server rendering, like having that SignalR connection under the covers, or by using WebAssembly, where you download a WebAssembly runtime and handle that validation logic client-side. In .NET 11, we now have built-in support to our static server-side rendering, where we can just handle client-side validation for you without having to turn on a full interactive render mode. We do that by adding some more JavaScript, basically, to Blazor web.js to implement that client validation logic. And in .NET 11 Preview 7, we've made a few improvements and changes to how this works. So if I let's get some validation errors going here, and then if I let's type my name, so this one's actually valid. Let's make this one dirty. So I've modified it, but I haven't actually tabbed out yet. A couple things to note is that if we look at the what's being rendered on these elements, like here for, let's see if I can get all these into the view. The screen is so big now, it's hard to see. Well, I guess we'll just one at a time. So the top one, you can see it's now got, it's kind of split, but it's got valid on that first element to give you the green boundary. We're now using the same class names that we use for interactive client-side validation with the built-in JavaScript client-side validation. So like valid, and then if we go down to like the next one, we should see that this one is invalid and modified. Yeah, then we can see it's modified, and then again, sorry, it's split across here, but it says it's invalid. So those are the same class names that we would use if this was a fully interactive form. We're now using those with client-side validation. Also, we've been working really hard to like improve the localization experience. So if I switch over here to Español, la lengua de Javier, that's my terrible attempt to speak Spanish. You can see that when I get validation errors, let's go ahead and submit that all the validation error messages are also coming in Spanish, including things that would be produced from data annotations. We had enabled this previously in .NET 11, but now it's really built in. There's no longer a need to add a separate package to get this localization feature added. You can see if I look at my package references for my Blazor application, I don't need I think it was like Microsoft extensions validation.localization or something like that. I can't remember exactly the package name, but we just merged this functionality now into the stack, so it's just there. You don't have to turn it on that way. So localization hopefully will now be easier when you're doing client-side validation. Yes, so Bruno, we speak the Spanish, though very poorly. Let's see if there's any questions. Nothing about these features. We might have some questions from caching that Daria that we'll come back to. Okay, so that's the new client-side validation improvements. Aligning the class names. The localization support is now just built in. Since we're here looking at the packages that this app references, it's worth pointing out this new package, which is Microsoft ASP.NET Components.server.autopause. What is this? Well, we've been working on the pause and resume functionality for Blazor Server apps for quite a while now, where we have this ability now where you can take the state from your Blazor Server app and you can persist it so that it can free up those server resources and help improve the scalability of your application, and then resume that circuit later when the user comes back or when they reconnect to your application. So this helps your app be more scalable, cost less in terms of your server resources. We've been adding hooks and features so that you can control when circuits get paused and when they get resumed. In .NET, I think it was 10, we had a client-side JavaScript API that you could use for this. And I even showed some demos where depending on the visibility of the browser, you could decide to persist the circuit state and pause it, and then bring it back when the browser becomes visible again. But it was code you had to add manually yourself. In .NET 11, we've added now a C# server API that you can use for pausing circuits. So you could do things like detect if the circuit is idle and then pause the circuit at that point. And then we've also added a built-in policy, an AutoPause feature that does basically that same thing with the browser visibility. Like if the user isn't actually looking at the app, there's no reason to necessarily keep the circuit state hanging around on the server. You might as well pause it while the user's watching YouTube or the ASP.NET community stand-up. And then when they come back to the app, you can then resume the circuit and get them back to where they're at. So to enable this feature, you need to add that package that I just showed you. So add the Microsoft aspnetcore components.server.autopause package. And then there's a little bit of config that you're going to want to do in your app. There's this new with browser options API that we added. This is new in 11 as well, that lets you kind of set JavaScript configuration settings in Blazor, but from your server code. So it's just a little easier to deal with. And then we have this add AutoPause method that you call to say I would like to use AutoPause. It's actually enabled by default, so you don't technically need to set it to true, but that's just showing you that if you want to turn it off, there's an API for doing that. And then for demo purposes, I've added I've set the timeout for when it will pause to be just 10 seconds. No, I think by default it's like 2 minutes when the browser goes not visible, when the visibility event says hidden. It'll wait 2 minutes before actually pausing the circuit. For demo purposes, I've reduced that down to 10 seconds. And what we want to be able to do is to have an interactive page. Like here, I've got a counter. I can click the count goes up. This is using interactive server-side rendering. So we got our signal, our connection, the state of this counter is being held in a circuit on the server. But now let's say I want to go check to see if, before we do that, take note of the circuit ID so we can tell whether or not we have a new circuit or not. So this one ends in PVG. Okay, so remember 4PVG. Daria, you're in charge of remembering that. Okay, don't forget 4PVG. All right, now let's go to see if is .NET 11 out yet? Has it released? Let's see, downloads, all .NET versions. Not yet, still not there yet. Maybe we would go, watch a community stand-up or two while we're waiting. Oh, this one looks really good, looks interesting. Whatever. Can we come back 10 seconds later and to look at our app, and we should see. Oh shoot, I forgot. There's a little small bug. .NET 11, where if you navigate to this page using an enhanced nav, it doesn't work. Let me do it again. So I'm just going to refresh this page. This is a bug that's getting fixed in the next preview. So, okay, let's click the button. We've got, let's do 10 clicks. Okay, now it's new circuit ID. Daria, it's CA. I think it's a 0 or OE. CAO or 0E. Okay, now we go and we wait 10 seconds.
Now we need 10 more seconds that we need to fill with something, isn't it?
Yes. Let's see. What do we talk about? Let's see.
I see. So, yeah, maybe questions. The other thing that I was going to say is that you could do this yourself. In the past, even in .NET 10, we've made it easier to do it by default based on some activity, and you can wire up your own checks, and you can also do things like block when you don't want the app to actually go away. And the thing that I would say is that you want to be mindful that you are turning down the circuit and you are starting another new one. So you have to write code to handle the state that gets saved between those two things. So unlike reconnection, where you've already lost the circuit, so you don't have anything to lose. In this case, you need to be wary about not degrading the experience for users. So don't do it after 10 seconds.
Makes sense. Okay, so let's see if we go back now. There it goes. You can almost see there was a little bit of overlay while it's resuscitating the circuit, resuming the circuit. And these are different letters, right, Daria? These are, yes. So it's a new circuit, but you can see that our counter state was persisted, it was saved, it was resumed back to where the user was. So while we were talking about, Javier was explaining all the important things about pause and resume, we were saving our server resources, didn't have to pay for them, and then we're able to resume that circuit later. That one case that Javier was talking about where you might not want the circuit to be paused. Let's say I have this text box down here and the user, has typed some very important text and they don't want to lose this. So now this input is modified, it's dirty. If we do the same trick again, I'm not going to make you wait another 10 seconds. But if I go and often watch YouTube for 10 seconds and come back, the Blazor will detect I have a modified input here, so I shouldn't pause because I might lose some important user state. We do some heuristics like that out of the box, and you can, like Javier said, you can go in and add some code yourself if you want to even have finer grain control about when this happens.
And I have not tried this, but I believe that you can actually in the callback just focus out to trigger Blazor to do the change. And then after it has been focused out, the data gets sent to the server, and then you can probably pause. The thing that like you need to be aware is that pause and resume saves the state on the dotnet side, not on the DOM. So that means if you have state on the DOM that is dirty, that has not been propagated to the server, like in this case, you have a very long form or like a text editor or something like that. That's something that like you need to deal somehow, either by saving it or like proactively or just focusing out.
Yeah. So like what gets saved? Like in this case, the only thing that I'm really saving is this one field on my component. Like I've explicitly annotated it to say that this is persistent state. I'd like this saved. That's the thing that gets saved when the circuit gets persisted. So the way you should think about this is you have some sort of like .NET object, something that represents the state of your UI, whatever is sufficient for you to resurrect or resume that circuit again. You'll need to capture that in something that gets persisted, and then use that to handle the pause and resume scenario. So that's how you can do that using the persistent state attribute. Cool. All right. It's a pretty cool feature. Can make your Blazor server app scale, to handle a lot more users, particularly if you have users that are often idle or not using their apps actively all the time. Very nice. Let's see if there's any other questions about this. Some questions about WASM stuff. We'll get to WASM in just a bit. Okay, so that's pause and resume. Next, I wanted to show you some of the new analyzers that we've added to Blazor. These were some wonderful community contributions. I think this came from our friends over at Infragistics. So thank you to them. So here's a page that's showing a bunch of the analyzers that we've added. So let's see. Well, first one, a common problem that people stumble on in Blazor is if you have like a for loop like this, and then you have the for loop variable, and then you just reference that variable from some Razor rendering logic inside the loop. It doesn't update the way you would expect. Like the initial value kind of gets captured, and then you get unexpected runtime logic. So what you're actually supposed to do is like define a new variable inside the loop in Razor and capture the value of the for loop at that point, and then use it for rendering purposes. So now, in order to help you catch this case, which a lot of people trip up on, we now have a nice analyzer that will detect that this is happening and tell you to capture that variable appropriately. So that's one. Another is, state has changed. Like, who hasn't done this? Like, where you're not getting your component to render the way you want, and so you think to yourself, well, maybe I'm just not calling state has changed enough, and you start sprinkling random state has changed calls throughout your code, hoping that this will trigger the rendering that you're expecting to see. There are a bunch of cases where Blazor will call state has changed for you, and that is not the problem. So adding state has changed will not help. So now we have an analyzer that detects those cases where state has changed is already being called, and you're just doing it, unnecessarily. So you can remove those calls. Like here we have this is an event handler basically for the increment event. After every event handler, every event callback, Blazor will automatically call state has changed. So there's no reason here to manually invoke state has changed. So you can just remove that code. So you have a nice analyzer for that. If you have trouble keeping track of all the cases where Blazor does this for you, don't worry. The analyzer will pick those up for you. Another case is you have a JavaScript interrupt call. These can throw exceptions, so you generally want to have a try catch around these asynchronous JavaScript interrupt calls. So if you don't have one, we have an analyzer that will encourage you to do proper error handling. There are some cases where you're like doing a component library where you might want to let the exception bubble, and that's fine. Just suppress the warning in that case. But for a lot of application level code, you do want to handle the potential for a JavaScript interrupt problem. And then if you have a JS invocable method, those shouldn't be private, those should be public. So we have an analyzer that lets you know about that, saying, hey, you should really make that JS invocable method public. This is a method that you want to be able to call from JavaScript using the WebAssembly, the JavaScript interrupt model in Blazor. There's also one more that's not, we're still working on a little bit like this. There's a case where if you try to get the authentication state from the Blazor auth provider, you really should also hook an event to know that the auth state has updated. That the analyzer is actually running, but it's putting the diagnostic, unfortunately, in a weird spot. Preview releases, there still be bugs. This is one of the reasons actually why we're showing you these features, is because we want you to help us try out the new features. Let us know. Send us feedback about things that aren't working quite right, with experience isn't quite satisfying your user scenarios. But at least it's giving you the right information that if you're going to get the authentication state, you should probably also hook the authentication state changed event so that you know when the user has changed. So that's what this diagnostic is doing. We'll see if we can get this diagnostic to appear in a more reasonable spot in your Razor file. The great thing I love about the new analyzers is that, if you're working with an AI coding agent, AI coding agents love that immediate feedback. These analyzers feed into the coding agent. They can see the warnings and then react to them. So it helps your coding agent also be more effective. So it's good for human developers as well as for your AI coding buddy. Okay, and then that's the analyzers. Lastly, so one more. Let's do a non-Blazor feature. Let's do APIs. So we've been working hard on OpenAPI 3.2 support in .NET 11. Let's bring this up. And one of the things that OpenAPI 3.2, which is the latest version of the OpenAPI spec, one of the things that it enables is support for streaming formats. Like if you have a minimal API endpoint that's doing server-sent events, there's now a good way to represent that in your OpenAPI spec. So if let me pull this up and let's browse to the OpenAPI spec here. All right, before actually we go diving into this, let me show you what the API looks like. So over here in Program CS, actually no, in server-sent events, this endpoint. Okay, so I've defined a few minimal API endpoints here. Let's look at this top one, this to-do stream. You can see it's using the existing type result for doing server-sent events. And it's grabbing a bunch of to-dos and streaming them down to the client. You can look down below to see what that looks like. So here's where we're getting our list of to-dos to stream. Down at the bottom, you can see we have a for each loop where we're just looping over each of these to-do items and then creating a server-sent event item that's of type to-do. So it has a typed format for that particular event. I then go over here. Let's go ahead and try the endpoint. I think I've got here's a terminal set up. This one. Let's just do a curl request to the that to-do stream endpoint. What we should see is like a set of to-do items being streamed back. You see that? So there's a little delay put between each one. We're getting a payload and then an update and an update. So that's our streaming server-sent event-based API endpoint. The cool new thing in .NET 11 Preview 7 is we can now properly represent that in the OpenAPI specification. So again, 3.2 version of the spec. And in here someplace, if we search for, what was it, stream, to-do streams, this one, to-do stream. Okay, so now you can see in the content of this to-do stream, we're getting an actual proper text event stream as per the spec. This is saying that the data property is required, and we can see that down here we're getting the structure of that data property, that it is an actual to-do list. And if you have other endpoints that are like sending different payloads for different events, you can specify that all out in your OpenAPI spec as well. So thank you to our friends on the OpenAPI.NET team who have been working with us on the OpenAPI 3.2 support and the community contributions that have been coming in and lighting up these features. That's great. Okay, cool. So those are the main things that I wanted to show. There is more. This isn't the only the end of the complete list of things that are new. So here's the actual Preview 7 release notes. You can find these on the .NET Core repo on GitHub. So when we talked about AutoPause, we showed the caching support and the new analyzers. Virtualize now is, we had in a previous preview, there was an item comparer that you had to add in certain cases. We no longer require that, so a little bit of simplification in one of the virtualized scenarios. We talked about the QuickGrid support for the new virtualized features like setting the initial item and scrolling to an item. Some other things that are worth mentioning, we've updated our WASM tools workload to use the latest version of Inscription. So it gets all the performance improvements and hardening and goodies from Inscription 6. We've been working on our Razor language support for when you use union types with your components. So that's getting better. We now can handle unions that involve strings and have you be able to still use the normal string literal syntax in your attributes. So things getting better there. We talked about the server sent the Blazor client-side validation improvements. That's where we're using the class names from interactive rendering. You no longer need to add a package. The localization is built in. We have been working on making the Microsoft Extensions validation library that is the basis for all the new validation features that we're adding to minimal APIs and to Blazor, making that no longer experimental. It shipped in .NET 10, but a lot of the API surface area of Microsoft Extensions validation was still labeled as an experimental API. We were still working on it, iterating on it. We're trying to wrap that all up for 11, so that API surface area is now fully stable. SignalR, we added support for auth token refresh I think that was actually shipped in preview 6, but we've done work now in preview 7 so that it can support redirecting to a different server. That's to enable it to work with the Azure SignalR service. They're working on and adding that support, the server-side support part of it shortly, so that should be coming soon. I think the TypeScript support for auth token refresh, I don't think that landed in preview 7, but that's I think that work is now done and will be coming in the initial release candidate. And then we talked about the OpenAI API support for server-sent events. Lastly, this is a kind of a lower level feature, but channel binding tokens is now surfaced at the lower levels of the stack. This is for when you have you're doing auth over a secure channel and you want to tie the auth token to the secure channel. We now surface that capability from the underlying transport at the Kestrel and HBSys layers, so that you can properly handle channel binding, token binding for your applications. So that's the full list of things to try out. So if you haven't downloaded a .NET 11 preview release yet, you should absolutely go do so. Any I don't know if it's out yet. Let's see. Should we go check one more time? Is it?
Do we need to fill in 10 more seconds for some reason?
No. I just want to see if it's there. I want to know if the release is live. Not quite yet. Still not there. So keep mashing your refresh button on the browser to see if preview 7 has shown up yet. It should be available shortly after this live stream is over, and hopefully for any folks that are watching the recording, it will definitely be available by the time you get a chance to watch. If you run into any issues, open up GitHub issues on github.com in the aspnetcore repo. Send us your feedback. Let us know how the scenarios are working for you. All right, with that, let's see if there are any questions that people have. Let's see. There were some questions about WebAssembly. Okay, yeah. Someone was asking about the status of our WASM, .NET WASM runtime consolidation effort. So we are actively working on moving Blazor WebAssembly, our .NET WebAssembly support to Core CLR. The current .NET WebAssembly runtime is based on Mono, and we are basically trying to get rid of Mono. And WebAssembly is the last platform that we need to do that for. The Maui folks have already done it for the mobile platforms, so they have moved to Core CLR. We're doing that for WebAssembly as well. It's expected to be available in experimental preview support for .NET 11, but it won't be done. We'll need a little bit more time than .NET 11 really gives us. So expect that to really fully land in .NET 12. So for .NET 11, your Blazor WebAssembly apps will still be on the existing Mono runtime. That's unchanged. There will be an option that you can try out the new Core CLR based support. It's a little bit early right now. I think it's still partially functional, shall we say. still getting getting worked on, and the performance also still needs a lot of work, but the team is working hard on that. If you want to be an early adopter, feel free to give that a try with your Blazor WebAssembly apps. Just don't be surprised if you get like a runtime crash or things are slow, those types of things. Feel free to share that feedback, but the team probably knows it's just early in that development process. That will be landing in .NET 12, so it's coming. But it'll take a little bit more time. Not even going to land fully in 11. All right. Someone's asking me, what is your monitor setup? I have a dual monitor setup where I just have 2 Dell screens, one on my left, one on my right. Nothing fancy. Pretty basic. Someone's mentioned that they really liking the Blazor invoke constructor, new JavaScript interrupt methods. I think we added those. What was that like? Is that 9? I can't remember.
In 10.
Was it 10? Yeah. Where we tried to simplify property accessing and dealing with constructors. Yeah, that's we're thinking as we start looking forward to 12. There's a lot more things we're thinking about, like how we can improve our JavaScript interrupt story. So I'm glad you're liking the new APIs. All right. Someone, wasn't completely sold on Blazor. Was it Malik? Malik, if you could want to share with us at some point, where Blazor didn't quite meet your needs, we'd love to hear about that. There certainly are cases where using a front-end JavaScript framework like React or Vue is perfectly valid, and we have lots of teams at Microsoft that do that. There are scenarios where Blazor works really, really well, and there are cases where maybe that actually using front-end JavaScript might be the right call. But we'd love to hear what issues you ran into. Let us know. Send us a GitHub issue or reach out to us on social media. We'd love to talk to you about that. We try to have very satisfied Blazor users. Someone was asking, Cache View is awesome. Daria, good work. Still cannot adjust to the sentence attribute supply parameter from query. Yeah, it's the convention we use. Supply parameter is where we landed, and I know some of the attributes end up kind of long with that one.
The challenge with this thing is after 10 years of developing the framework, there are 3 different areas of the framework that they don't describe their own attributes, and we wish we could just do query or form, but unfortunately we cannot.
Yeah, some of there's some existing attributes that exist that we don't want to collide with or cause confusion with. So naming is hard. We do try. We spend a lot of time, don't we, Javier, doing API reviews and arguing about what's the right name for things. But sometimes we get it really good, and sometimes there's room for improvement. But we want to keep compatibility because we don't want you make sure that as you upgrade from version to version, that your APIs aren't just randomly churning. So we try to keep things stable once they have actually shipped. Okay, I think that's what we got for you folks today. Try out .NET 11 Preview 7. Daria, thank you for showing us your work on Cache View. It looks great. If you run into any problems with Cache View, send Daria a GitHub issue. She'd love to help you out. Happy coding, everyone, and keep mashing that refresh button and look for the .NET 11 Preview 7 release later today. All right. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.